Good morning and welcome to City Talk. It's a weekly radio program. It's a podcast. It's a TV program. It's an opportunity here at the City of Waco that we use to communicate everything that's great happening in Waco and opportunities that we have for volunteers to step forward like we're going to do this morning. I'm Larry Holsey, Director of Municipal Information for the city, and I'll be your host for this program. Today I'd like to welcome two ladies who have a very important role with the Waco Police Department, taking care of the victims rather than dealing with the crime itself. We have Melissa Becerra, who is the director of the Victim Services Unit of the Police Department, and Missy Sparks, who is the volunteer coordinator. Ladies, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
You all are getting ready to have a new training class for volunteers. But before we get into talking specific about that, I need a little bit of background for our listeners and viewers about just the unit itself. It is a unit of the police department. You all are not commissioned officers like the police officers, but you all serve, as I indicated earlier, a very vital part of a situation when a crime occurs or a tragedy occurs. You all step in and take care of the people who have been offended, who hurt, and or maybe in pain or in, talk about mental anguish, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Talk about the unit, how long it's been in existence maybe, and then we'll talk more specifically about the training that you're going to will.
Sure. Yeah, the unit, it began in 1994, so Waco's been fortunate to have a victim services unit for quite some time. As of right now, we have 3 staff members, myself, Missy, and Isabel, and we primarily cover call during the day. So from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we're on call and responding with the officers and detectives to go out and assist the victims and witnesses on crime scenes. So typically the way that what it looks like is when an officer gets to a scene and a victim is in distress, is upset, we kind of come in with the human side of law enforcement. We bring a different thing to the table as far as comfort. We educate the victim. So we go out and we basically walk them through the crime scene, what they're going to see, what they can expect, and just explain everything to them, try to comfort them, and just be there for them.
I think that's probably the main thing anybody would ever tell me, and I've always learned too, that comforting hand, holding a hug, or just being there for somebody to talk to, or to be able to vent, or just to share it with, staying alone and seeing the officers do what they have to do and to investigate the crime itself. Many times we have some unfortunate physical, things, death and blood and things that you can only imagine if you've watched television. Some of that stuff is way out of proportion maybe, but it's reality in many times. So, and so you all are a victim services unit of the police department. You get called out 24 hours a day.
Yes. And
you need volunteers to be able to be on call to handle those after-hour calls.
Correct.
And that's what we're talking about here. And Missy, you're kind of in charge of volunteers, and so recruiting volunteers is a crucial part of this. And I think, do you have these the training classes once a year or twice a year? Or how often do you have it?
Well, with the current situation, we usually try to have them at least twice a year. It's kind of changed everything of how we do everything.
And you're bringing up COVID, is that what you're talking
yes,
about?
Yes, the COVID.
Okay.
So we do try to do the training, and like you said, and like Melissa said, we do cover during the day. So the volunteering is for nights and weekends. The shift will start when we leave off at 6 until 6 in the morning, and then the shifts are split up into 7 different shifts during the on the weekends. So you can kind of pick what's available, what you're available for. It's not, you have to stick with that one. So it's kind of flexible on the shifts and the hours that you can do. Mm-hmm. And the training, the academy, we get officers and detectives from all the different units that we go out with, the ones that call us out the most, so we can prepare and educate. That's the most important thing, is educate as much as we can to prepare you to go out on the calls that you're going to be getting called out on.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to get an inside look at what the policing, first of all, goes through. Now we had Citizens on Patrol and that group in here a couple of weeks ago talking, and it's a part of community outreach and support, which I don't think you're necessarily a part of that, but you're similar to it because you're reaching out and taking care of the community from there. So But taking care of those victims is very, very critical. So we need volunteers. Right now, you only have about, 10 or 12?
Yeah, 12 volunteers.
And that's down considerably because I think you've had a number of people, some of are elderly, who maybe have experiences being a pastor or somebody who has a compassionate, loving heart. And some of those are a little concerned about getting out into the world with the COVID is the way it is.
Right.
And so that's kind of limited some of the numbers that you have, and so you're needing attention.
Yeah, we normally have about 20 to 25 volunteers. Right now we're down to about 12. Now our team of 12 is amazing. We're still going out on the same number of calls. Everything, our operations have stayed the same because we are a response unit for the police department. So we haven't really changed anything. We do require a mask, of course. We try to social distance as much as we can. It's kind of hard in some situations because a crime scene, you can't always predict what's going to happen or what's needed, or the people that are showing up, high emotions. So you can't always predict that. We try, but there are some situations where you just can't help it. And we gave our volunteers the choice. We had some that were elderly. We had some that had medical conditions, and they had to choose to step down, which we completely understand.
Sure.
So that's kind of why our numbers went down a little bit. But as staff and our smaller team, we've still been making it happen and going and helping the community.
But crime really hasn't changed that much. I mean,
No.
how would you say the COVID has overall impacted the amount of calls you all are receiving or needing to give support for?
I really haven't seen a shift in
Was just fixing to say the same.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen a shift.
it's
So that's one
typically
thing
the
that
same.
COVID has not impacted really.
No.
It's the needs out there. Now, just right off the bat, before we get into any of the other training, first of all, nobody's ever expected to go out into a scene that would be a cause of life-threatening to them because the scene is under control. Talk a little bit about that, because I think the safety of your volunteers and people who are asking to go share their abilities, their talents, their calming atmosphere and things. Talk about that.
Yeah, so when we get called out to a scene, there's always officers present. Our officers know, so I'll first add, we not only answer for Waco, we answer for McLennan County. So we get called for the smaller agencies, Robinson, Belmead. Those other small agencies utilize us a lot too. And the sheriff's department, and they know that they need to stick with us because we're civilians, same as the volunteers. We're not armed. We're not officers. So we need them for protection and safety. So the volunteers will always have an officer that calls them out. They will make contact with that officer on scene and get the information, type of call, kind of the history of what's going on. And then those officers will stay on scene. The only place where we might be out on a call by ourselves is at a hospital where you're behind a locked door, you have hospital security. But even then, the officers typically stay with us.
Right.
And examples of those would be assaults, sexual assaults, those type of calls that need medical attention. Fatality accidents, car accidents, different things like that where medical attention is required. We will respond to the hospitals. But as far as safety, that is one thing. Our volunteers, there's a very open communication with staff and the volunteers, and if they don't feel safe on a call, they tell us. They report straight to Missy, sorry. And sorry, that's the name we
revealed something
yes,
special here.
That's her nickname.
Sparky, okay.
And
We'll talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
And so they typically give her the reports and let her know those things, and then she'll bring those to me if I need to address them with the officer. But safety is a very big concern.
Well, I just want to address that
Yeah,
because
sure.
when you go to a crime scene, you think, "Oh my goodness, what is my life?" And
Right.
you're protected by the police officers there and everything.
And that is one thing that we go over several times during the academy as well.
And one thing I'll add to that too, I'm not wearing my polo today, but the shirt that Missy's wearing, we provide the volunteers with a polo and a jacket. They have a name badge identifying them as victim services. We have 2 vehicles that are city vehicles that they come at the beginning of their shift, or when they get a call, they pick up the vehicle. It has a radio in it, car seats. We tried to provide them with everything that they need to go out on a call. And
yeah, when you mention car seat, that always brings up the situation that I know you all get involved with, is taking care of the children involved in a situation. And sometimes, and many times, a police incident is a domestic disturbance. And those are probably some of the most challenging ones and most dangerous ones a police officer will go on. Where a husband and wife, as it may be, or girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever, get into a violent situation. And unfortunately, the children are involved in that. And they're the sensitive little innocent bystanders that need to be cared for, loved, and not so they don't get a mental permanent burn in their brain about a bad situation that's going on. And you see the police coming in and taking dad away or mom away or all that kind of thing. Talk about because you mentioned the car seats, because you have to be prepared to transport children and people to maybe another loved one or family or something like. Talk about that kind of involvement.
Kid calls are my favorite. To me, going and picking up a child, there's all different scenarios. It's really hard to give specific examples because we can get called out on anything. We can take temporary custody of children while CPS is beginning the initial steps of their investigation. So we can remove a child from a crime scene and bring them up to the police department. Usually, we like to make sure they've eaten. If not, we'll roll through McDonald's and spoil them with a Happy Meal or something, and then we bring them up to the police department, and we try to let them have fun. We have a lobby full of toys and a TV. We have snacks. We have candy. We have all kinds of stuff, and we try to just make their time at the PD fun. We'll occasionally take them around and let them play in a patrol car with the lights and sirens and just introduce them to everybody and try to give them that positive, mental picture of police and hope that they remember that.
Absolutely. So critical, so critical. And we'll talk more about the kids a little bit more, because I know a few things I've made notes of that we talked about before we went on the air, things like that as well. But, okay, so the class is going to begin September the 15th. Excuse me. Where did I say September? Sparky, you gave me that problem.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to find out in a minute where Sparky came from. You have a story to tell?
I'll tell you. Yeah.
Go ahead and tell us now so we
gosh.
get that over with. So how did she get her Sparky name?
Her last name is Sparks, and she's always just super fun and enjoyable. So Sparky stuck, and if you get to know her, then you'll know why.
You'll know why.
Yeah, that's what I always tell everybody.
Well, and I'll just say, I cannot help but think that in a job situation, the challenging it is that you all have to confront, it helps to have a positive, can-do, get over it, sustain through, live through it, tomorrow is going to be okay type of attitude. And that's very tough for some people. And I'm sure you all deal with those people all the time, too.
Yes.
Okay, back to my original question, September-wise, Sparky. February the 5th is the deadline to register for your class. And you need volunteers. And the volunteers typically are what? You got to be 18 or older, or what's the age?
18 or older?
18 and older, 18 and up.
Yeah.
As long as you can operate a vehicle and drive at night and you're comfortable, you
Be
can
willing to get up, once or maybe 2 or 3 times during the night to answer calls. You don't have to stay awake through the whole, go on about your life. But just, be able to answer that phone and dispatch calls. And other than that, that's,
we communicate.
do all that.
You will be treated somewhat as a criminal, because you're going to go through a background check and some of that stuff to make sure you are not a criminal.
Yes.
And so, because you want only people who are not seeking to find out information about the police department and take advantage of a bad situation in a wrong way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have to clear a background check. They turn an application in to Missy, and she gets that down to our personnel unit. They run a criminal history, and then we do fingerprints also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. If you just joined us, we're visiting with Melissa Beceda, who is the director of the Victim Services Unit of the Waco Police Department, and Missy Sparky Sparks, who is a volunteer coordinator with the same unit. 2 ladies who have really dedicated their lives to making a big difference to people who are in about the lowest position you can be sometimes when the police are out dealing with something that's happened in their home, in their on the street or wherever it is. Right. All right. So the class is going to start, though, February the 15th and runs until the 24th?
Yes.
How many hours of class are you talking about? And kind of start giving us I always ask multiple questions.
You're fine.
Let's start talking about some of the subject matter. But talk, first of all, how many hours are they committing and what days of the week and things
So
like that?
the academy, we've shortened it. It's usually a 5-week. We're putting everything into 2 weeks. So it's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So 3 hours per night. We go over all the topics, and what I mean by topics, it's, we go over our general order, we go over the rules, the do's, the don'ts. And then we have officers and detectives come in again and go over how we work together, what's expected of us, and then they also go over the safety of being on a crime scene with them. And what am I forgetting?
I'd say they educate, for example, like the family violence night.
Yes.
We have a detective from family violence come in, and he talks about protective orders, different cases he's worked, and goes over how victim services can make a big impact on a victim on a crime scene to make them more cooperative throughout the process. So kind of showing them that what we do on a crime scene in the first moments affect the whole investigation.
And also educate. I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of come in and teach us, and hopefully we can teach, the volunteers new things that they didn't know about. But to kind of go back and what she was saying, it's to also teach those victims and educate those victims, because some of this stuff that they don't know. So we try to, get enough information to our volunteers so they can, because that's what we're here for, is to help that victim and educate, give them resources, and let them know that there's help out there for them.
I can see where you all could be at the crime scene itself, kind of a liaison, where you take and get the trust and confidence of the victims. Where sometimes an officer wearing a gun and a badge and all that kind of stuff and all the other
can be
things they've got can be a
intimidating.
little intimidating.
Yeah.
And it's something I can see where you can say, hey, by telling him this, it's going to help the situation, and you're not whatever. So the training that the volunteers would have
Yes.
would help in that situation too. So.
Yeah, we try to teach them about resources. So, like, we'll have the Family Abuse Center come in, the Advocacy Center. We try to educate them not only on the department side of things, but also resources, because that's our number one thing. We go out, we support the victim, we walk them through the crime scene and the criminal justice part, what to expect, but then also we hand every single victim resources for things like counseling, financial support, funeral homes, anything. We have a brochure that we give out that's got a ton of resources in it in the city of Waco. So teaching those resources is important.
Well, you just mentioned several things that are always probably involved in every situation almost, that, those resources, you forget about it, but when you're having to maybe abandon the house that you're living in, or your car's all crashed and wrecked and everything else, how do I get to and from, who can I stay with, and all this kind of stuff. And so
Those are everyday issues.
Every day.
Exactly.
Every day.
And we don't think about it until it happens to somebody or us or something like that. But you all are prepared to handle that kind of thing. You mentioned funerals and things like that. I know death notifications and having to deal with death is a tragedy.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have to be a crime sometimes, because I think you get called out sometimes on just death calls, as it may be, questionable deaths, as they sometimes call them.
Right.
But it's being able to be there, to be that comforting, caring person that can help sort out all the details of what's going to have to transpire. I mean, when you have the victim still there, and then make sure who picks up and takes care of. You mentioned the funeral homes and things like that. That's a thing you don't think about right now. You're not thinking about who to call,
Right.
and what the cost is, or what the options are, and all the things that are running through your mind. And that's the type of thing that somebody with a sweet personality and a caring, loving, caring personality can make a huge difference. And that's what we're needing. So y'all are out there, and you know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you. If your heart is being pulled a little bit, we have a place for you, and there's a calling for you. And I think you all, first of all, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of your training, you do some ride-alongs, and they actually get to go out and kind of experience what it's like. Because it's not for everybody.
Right, exactly.
And
Some
it's not for
people
everybody.
may find this is not good, so it's kind of a trial offer if you want to.
Yes. And
to,
we're
to
not
get in
going
and
to.
talk about that, and then let's maybe get into a little more detail of some of the other things if we haven't touched them all, as far as the topics that the training, because I think you do about 35 hours worth of training.
It's
I believe that's all.
typically 35 hours. Right now, we've got it down to about 20 to 20. It's about 20 hours in class. The extra comes from the ride-along. It's usually a 10-hour ride-along. Right now with COVID, we're not doing police ride-alongs because we don't want to put two people in the same vehicle. But what worked last time for us, we did an academy this fall, a very small academy. What we did was while they were in class, if we got a call, we would grab them and take them out with us. And they just shadowed us. So that was kind of that hands-on experience. And because to me, getting to see what we're explaining in class and then taking it out on a crime scene with the lights and the commotion and everything is so different. And you can just see that light bulb come on with some of the volunteers.
Absolutely.
And that's when they fall in love with it.
Well,
really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can see that as far as, getting past the blood, guts, and gore, if you want to call it that, and some of the trauma and all that kind of stuff. But then seeing the need that's out there and how you, as a volunteer, victim services person, can take control and help that person through.
It's rewarding when you walk up to somebody, like she's saying, you're seeing this person on their worst day, and just being able to help somebody and to see it in their face and their body language, just the relief of knowing that there's somebody there, because you don't think of all that stuff on that particular day and what to do, and that's the rewarding part for me is seeing that look in a victim's face, knowing that I've helped.
Tell me a little bit more about the volunteers that you've had before, or the makeup of them. Do you have couples? Do you have individuals? Do you have maybe Sunday school class people or church people or non-church people? And I know you have a variety
I
of
love
that.
our
But
volunteers because we have a variety of all.
yeah.
Everything you mentioned.
Everything that you just mentioned. It's just we have a big variety.
Go ahead.
We have anywhere from 18 years old, right out of Tarleton and MCC. They're doing an internship and they're wanting to volunteer to put that time on their resume or experience, all the way up to, we had Walton. He was 84 when he left. So, I mean, to me, as long as you can function and do what's asked and your heart is called to it, as long as you're able, then to me, if you're willing to get out there.
A number of your volunteers personally, and some of them are couples.
Yes,
and that's
yes,
just
we've had
something they
couples.
do, and they're very gifted. They're blessed to have that comforting, loving, caring,
Right.
ability, and they share it. And that means when they get up in the middle of the night, they're getting up together.
They get up together.
And they go and that gives that other moral support. And I think I've also heard of several like Sunday school classes or people like that who work together.
Yes.
Again, and I'm not necessarily harking on the religious background part of it, but that's where a lot of people are carrying loving hearts and stuff. But it doesn't require that. That's just something that if you're inclined to that, and that's so special. Because, now, how many? You mentioned that you've had 20. How many are you hoping to have? And is there a capacity on the class that you're getting ready to start?
Good question. It is going to be very limited. I would say it's kind of right now first come, first serve. Not saying that I won't hold the application. Excuse me. That I won't hold an application and put that towards the next upcoming academy. But I want to say
right now
we'll probably cap it at what
10.
We probably won't take any more than 10 right now.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
because of
Just
COVID
for
and
spacing and
Sure.
it was really nice. Our last academy, it was a small group, but they were a very dedicated group, and it was really nice to have a lot of one-on-one interaction with them and being able to take them out on calls with us while they were training. that
But
was
if you
really
have
nice.
10, and I'm sure your graduation rate's pretty high, you might have a few dropouts or whatever, every occasionally. for
that
whatever reason.
happens.
That happens.
But, if you can add 10 to your approximately 12 right now, then you're up to 20 or more.
Yeah.
And that's comfortable to give you all, first of all, you as staff members, more relaxation. Even though you don't go out at nights, I'm sure there are times when you have to because you just can't find a victim, a volunteer to go out, and that stresses you all even more because you do need time off because you're trying to run a department, first of all, and respond to calls as well.
And we rotate call, so each week a different staff member's on call to answer questions for volunteers, go out if we have to after hours, and during the day we rotate call to do that. I know you asked about topics for the academy. I wanted to make sure we didn't forget that because a lot of people are interested. We have our orientation night first, and that's kind of the boring night where we have to cover all the
tell 'em that.
paperwork.
It's gonna be an exciting night,
We
the
make
first
it
night.
fun. Sparky makes it fun. We make it fun.
Try.
But we go over all the paperwork and the general orders, things like that, and expectations, and then we bring in crime scene because we want the volunteers to be able to explain a crime scene to a victim. This is why they're taping off. This is why they're dusting for fingerprints, taking pictures, gathering evidence, and why. We do death notifications. I'll teach that portion on death notifications, and then we have a
Radio.
detective come in and do accident reconstruction. That we do a lot of death notifications for fatalities. We do radio night with dispatch, make them understand the meaning behind dispatch, kind of where that all starts, and then we have them practice on the radio because a lot of people are scared of communicating on the police radio in 10 code, so we try to break that ice. We'll do family violence with the shelter. They come in. We do crimes against children in the advocacy center. So we cram a lot.
It is a lot of information.
Yeah.
Yes. And Sparky provides them. She makes binders with all of the PowerPoints and the information so that we don't expect everybody to memorize it. They can take that home and have that as a resource to kind of go through.
Tests.
No tests.
Oh,
no
yes,
tests.
there's a test. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking.
Well, no, that scares some people. Like
Yeah.
No test.
Well, again, I know that y'all are not going to leave anybody alone as far as not having a proper back information and preparedness, as it may be, to be involved. Now, you mentioned earlier about there's a vehicle or two. Are there occasions where people may go directly from their home at night in their own vehicle? Is there anything wrong with that, or do they have to go, or are there rules on that, or what?
Yes, it's very few and far between. We have had circumstances where a call is a minute from someone's home. They'll call staff and get permission to drive their vehicle. But the city provides 2 vehicles, city gas, police radio, everything in them. Plus liability. We want them to drive the city vehicles because if by chance something were to happen on that crime scene, we'd rather it happen to a city vehicle than their personal.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And then you just never know, also to back up what she's saying, you never know what you're going to run into. It could be a simple call that there now turns into a transport and you can't transport in your personal vehicle. So we highly encourage to use what we have, what's available to you.
But you're also not asking, and right up front, you're not asking for anybody's commitment financially or anything involvement because the whole thing is free. You're asking for volunteers, and that means it's free. But the security, and you mentioned earlier about taking the kids by at McDonald's or something like that. I'm sure
We cover,
you
we
call
have a fund.
anything that y'all do with that type of stuff. So anyway, amazing stuff. So there you go. You listeners and viewers, you have an opportunity to be a part of a really important part of the police department, victim services. Just put yourself, only for a moment, in the hands of what happened if something happened to you and somebody at your family. You need somebody to support you, a loving, caring person, and that's what this is all about. And Melissa Beceda, who is the director of the victim services area, and Missy Sparks, I'm not going to say it, Missy.
You
I'm
can't,
just gonna
Sparky,
keep
that's what
keep
they
you
know
straight.
me by.
Who's a volunteer coordinator, been our guest on City Talk today. A very vital part of the police department. And I thank you all, first of all, for everything you do to bring the love and the compassion to our citizens throughout the county, to those who are most in need. And I also want to thank you for taking the time from your day to come down and be with us. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you all for joining us today, and we hope you'll join us again next week for more information about the city of Waco here on City Talk. This program is produced by the Municipal Information Department of the City of Waco and is provided as a public service by this station.